I don't know where I am, I don't know where you take me.
Hi guys, hope you're all doing well today. So I have got my August wrap up ready to share with you. I was hoping to finish another book, like, well, it's a bit ambitious actually because I still had quite a bit of pages, but I thought I would finish another one. Today's August 31st, but I thought I'm going out, let me just like film this beforehand so that I know it's done and then I'll just need to edit it. But anyway, this month I had a really happy reading month. I'm really pleased with the majority of the books that I read. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to wrap up my seasonal TBR, so it's probably going to go over to my autumn one, which is fine. I've been doing that anyway. So the 5 survivors left over from my summer TBR was Children of Blood and Bone, The Conference of Birds, Down and Out in Paris and London, Stranger Things, and Voice of the Gods. I am currently reading Voice of the Gods. This is the book that I kind of thought I might finish, but I ended up falling down the trap of watching too many YouTube videos. You know how it is. But I feel like I've got about 200 pages or so left, and this will complete one of the series that I had ongoing. That was a completed series that I wanted to finish this year. So yeah, I'll probably finish this off in the earlier part of September. But for now, here are the stats of the books that I did read for August. So I read One Friend or Family Loan, 5 ARC/NetGalley/ebooks. 3 of those were physical books, and total I read 8 books, which I'm really happy about. Genre breakdown, I read 2 YA fantasy, 1 YA contemporary, 1 genre/literary fiction, 1 adult contemporary, 2 non-fictions. In terms of any goals that I had, I actually managed to surpass my reading 20 ebook/NetGalley books that I want to do this year, and last month was 18 out of 20, and this month, because of the amount I read, I've surpassed it by 3, so I'm on a goal of 23 out of 20, which is amazing. So I will probably continue because I am just enjoying reading like ebook and stuff when I'm at work. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. This is how my page spread looks in terms of pages read, like my count of the day. Looking really good actually. I'm happy. I haven't done the 31st yet because I haven't read anything yet today, and I'm not sure if I will, so I've left that blank obviously because I haven't got anything to tally up. So yeah, let's get started with the books that I read. So the first thing I read was one of my e-arcs from NetGalley, and this was Shine On, the remarkable story of how I fell under a speeding train, journeyed to the afterlife, and the astonishing proof I brought back with me, by David Ditchfield and J.S. Jones, PH. So the release date of this was the 26th of June 2020, so it is already out for you guys to purchase a copy if you're interested in it. So what this is basically, I mean, the title was pretty self-explanatory. It's a story of how this guy, it's a true story of how this guy had a near-death experience and how it changed him. He ended up having these awesome like intuitions and skills for writing orchestral music, and he had never previously had any orchestral like education. He was in like the rock bands every now and then, like just little start-up things, but it never went anywhere, and other than that, like, he couldn't read annotations, and he actually is dyslexic, and that's why the J.S. Jones, he was helping him write this book. So yeah, when he had to, it goes into all of that, but basically the story is a really interesting story for a not so interesting guy, if you know what I mean. Like, he was really struggling at the time of the life that his world changed around, and he ended up surpassing so many things and hardships, like internal hardships, and yeah, it's almost like this near-death experience changed everything for him for the better, although he didn't see that straight away. So it is really interesting. I would totally recommend checking it out if you haven't. I am really interested in like spiritual books and like near-death experiences, so yeah, I'd love to read more if anybody has any recommendations on those sort of books. So yeah, as I said, I'm really fascinated by the near-death experience and how David's appeared to him. It was beautiful, so like captivating. Obviously you wouldn't put yourself in that situation, but it makes you think, wow, I wonder how other people's experiences differ, and are similar in some regards. It had so much substance that I really wasn't expecting, and I ended up caring so much about David's life. He's obviously a real guy, so I've sort of gathered this, not infatuation, but this interest in him, and the music and art he ended up producing and creating after this experience, both of which are beautiful. As I was reading, I googled, or as I was coming near the end, I googled the orchestral music he made, and it was beautiful, and the art pieces that he created, phenomenal. Please check it out preferably after you've read it, just because it gives you that much more perspective on how he had no skill whatsoever in art. He had no history with orchestral music and writing music, and he created this. Like, it just blows my mind. It was amazing. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I keep meaning to watch someone that I watch on BookTube, their live stream of this. I must do it. I need to remind myself. So this was what I borrowed from my cousin. It's one of the stacks that I borrowed like last Christmas, and I've finally finished that stack now. I think a lot of you probably know what Scythe is about, but we're in this kind of dystopian, utopian world where we as a human species has combated mortality. Death doesn't exist anymore, or at least natural death doesn't exist anymore. So because of that, in order to manage the population and keep it at like a constant level so the earth can still fend for us and provide for us, and it's not like overabundance, we have scythes who go around gleaning certain people, different demographics, different ethnicities or whatever, or they call them ethnic leanings because nobody really has like true roots anymore. They just sort of slightly sway to like what they call Pan-Asian, Afric, that sort of stuff. It's really interesting actually the more you read. And so yeah, they have a certain amount of people that they need to kill within a year or something. Each year obviously they have a certain status quo to get through, and yeah, it can be anybody. So in this book we are following 2 characters, Citra and Rowan, who have unfortunately found themselves in the position of being a Scythe's apprentice. It's one of those things where Scythes are both feared and awed. It's not a very nice job, but it's a job that needs to be done, and because of that it has these weird emotions attached to it. So yeah, we're just basically following them in their apprenticeship. There is a lot of plot twists, a lot of character growth developments. You learn a lot about being a Scythe, and basically just a lot of world building and just a setup for the main book, or for the first book of the series is what I'm trying to say. I did give this a 3 out of 5 stars. I felt like the concept in itself was really interesting, and this is definitely the driving force that will compel me to pick up the other books. Luckily I am borrowing these from my cousin, so I can sort of slowly go through them as and when. But yeah, I love the seamless blending of like these legendary vibes. It feels very medieval, yet it's obviously very futuristic in terms of like this utopia setting, how far advanced humanity has come, and the fact that we've conquered death and that sort of stuff. But it blends so well together, and for me reading it, it honestly raised so many questions on mortality, I guess, versus morality. I feel like I've said that on another book recently, and I can't remember what. Humanity, politics and corruption. So yeah, there was a lot of things that were very interesting for me to read and enjoyable to learn whilst reading it, but I do just feel like overall I was kind of detached from what was going on. I did very much feel like an outsider looking in. I didn't feel like so engrossed in the book that I would usually feel when I'm like in a new world and kind of learning the grips of it. And unfortunately I either expected or was very indifferent to the plot twists that came. It just didn't wow me, or I had already had like this niggling feeling that was going to happen, so I was kind of underwhelmed when it did, or yeah, just didn't inspire excitement in that regard. I do think in its delivery oftentimes it did come across a little bit boring. Again, perhaps it was just because it was very lengthy in its lore and world building. I understand that you have to do that for the first book, especially when you've got this whole new world, or it's like our world but vastly different. But it just felt very info dumpy. Yeah, so some of the information and points, it just felt like a boring lecture. It wasn't really delivered in any excitement kind of way. But yeah, it's a series I will be continuing on with. Not sure when, but as I say, I'm borrowing them from my cousin, so she won't mind lending me as and when I fancy. Next up, I read Lanny by Max Porter. This one I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. I don't even know how to compensate how I feel. So this book, I don't even know. I think I'm just going to read you the synopsis because I feel like I can't properly put into words like what it is. So anyway, not far from London there is a village. This village belongs to the people who live in it and to those who lived in it hundreds of years ago. It belongs to England's mysterious past and its confounding present. It belongs to Mad Pete, the grizzled artist, to ancient Peggy gossiping at her gate, to families dead for generations, to those who have only recently moved here. But it also belongs to dead Papa Toothwort, who has woken from his slumber in the woods. Dead Papa Toothwort, who is listening to them all. So yeah, you get a lot of hints and feelings and emotions and intentions from all the characters of this village, but it's mainly following our main character, Lanny, who is this little boy who has this very endearing, weird, quirky personality. He's very much, in my opinion, I would call him like a forest nymph or a fairy or something like that, because he has this very beautiful connection with the world and life, and he is so much wiser than he should be for a 6-year-old. He's just very, I think he's 6. I don't even know where I heard that. It might have mentioned in the book, but I feel like he's a 6-year-old. I don't know. It's just very endearing. I just found the whole vibe very mystical and otherworldly, not just through Lanny and his like weird ensemble of a character, but through the storytelling in general, the writing style, and this awesome personification of like the spirit of the village, which is dead Papa Toothwort. That was just so interesting. But it's not just mystical, it is quite jarring in its gruesome descriptions, particularly from dead Papa Toothwort. He is very vulgar sometimes in how he comes across and the descriptions surrounding him, but it is so, it's not jarring in that sense. It's just like when you see the contrast, but it works, if you know what I mean. I adored how as the plot became more frenzied, so did the writing style. It sort of changed to mimic that, and one thing that's very interesting is the writing style and the depiction of it. So you see on the back all the quotes of it, that's kind of like it mimics and mirrors inside. So like some, it's just written so weird, like some pages have words like just all across. There's pages where it just looks completely like that. You know, it's so interesting how he uses text and language and how it all comes together, and kind of the way it's printed on the page mimics what's actually happening, like the flow of words going through, the frenzy of the words as the plot's picking up. It's so beautiful how everything just works so perfectly together to deliver this amazing story. Yeah. But yeah, it's very enchanting. I would say it's like a haunting, magical realism. So yeah, I'll definitely be picking up Grief is a Thing with Feathers by this author, which had been in my mind for ages, and I just for some reason didn't pick it up. And I didn't realise until picking this up and reading it that it was the same author. So yeah, I'll be going back and reading that one for sure, hoping that it has similar feelings that this did. Then I read If You Come Softly by Jacqueline Woodson, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. So it's basically, although it was released in 1998, I want to say, it is a contemporary Romeo and Juliet story. Yeah, so we're following these two characters, Jeremiah and Ellie. Jeremiah is a black boy and Ellie is white and Jewish, and from that, talking about like race and interracial relationships, that's where we kind of have this Romeo and Juliet kind of vibe. But actually a lot more people, like friends, people that you'd care about, are more accepting than the Shakespeare story, which was nice, but still it's a very tragic story, very sad, very short, but it packs a punch. The characters in this were so beautiful. I really enjoyed reading about Jeremiah and Ellie's relationship, how they were as individuals. I loved how deeply Maya, who's Jeremiah, particularly felt when he was comfortable with people in expressing himself. So with the chosen few, he would talk about emotions and deep thoughts, and I loved that he did that and he felt comfortable too with his safe group, you know. I feel like the nods to Romeo and Juliet were very accessible for many. Having not really studied it too deeply when I was at school, I know the general layout and the gist of the story, so I felt like I could pick up on it. But in saying that, it wasn't so like obvious in your face, or subtle that you'd have to be a scholar to sort of get the hints and notes. Even though that might be the case, I just felt like I still understood, you know, the connection to the Shakespeare story. In terms of cons, I feel like I didn't enjoy the ending, in the fact that it felt too glazed over and rushed, and of course the insta love, but I mean, it's a short book, they kind of have to speed things up in that way, but perhaps if it was a little bit longer we wouldn't have got that. We would have wrapped it up more nicely, and that the love would have felt more natural and blossoming and grown. But at the same time, again, insta love, they are teenagers, that sort of thing does happen, so I sort of get it, but it's still something that always bothers me. Upon finishing this, I realised that there is a sequel that I'm very excited to get to, hopefully this year, just because it feels like I need more, because of the way the ending was rushed and like glazed over. I feel like I need to understand, like I obviously know I understand what happened, but I need more because it just happened so quickly, you know, and it seems like the second book develops on that a little bit more. So yeah, hopefully I shall get to that relatively soon. And then the next lot of books are books from NetGalley again, so pictures will be up next to me. So we've got The Wizard and the Potion of Dreams Volume 1 by Michael Sweater and Rachel Dukes. The release date for this is the 13th of October of this year, and I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5 stars. So I felt that the art style was really fun. I liked the really vivid colours, like the pops that it gave to the page and how it all stood out. I did quite enjoy the busy pages. I know sometimes that kind of gives people a bit of a headache because you don't really know where to look, but it was, for me, it felt very reminiscent of like Where's Wally pages. I just enjoyed taking my time kind of looking. I'd read it and then I'd again go back and take my time and look over all the different details and stuff. It was kind of like chaotically pleasing to the eye, but I will say the actual plot of it was underwhelmingly basic. It's a story like I've seen done many a times, and it doesn't really bring a very refreshing new narrative to it. It's basically like a hero story. You've got this medieval setting with a wizard, a hero, all these sort of things like villains, and they're just trying to find, you know what, I don't even know what they're trying to find. Casting my mind back, I can't even remember what they're trying to get ingredients for something. I think it's to make the hero, who is actually a princess, buff and strong like her family, because she's like the runt, the little one out of all of them, but all her family are like boom boom big hero princesses and big hero princes and stuff, and she feels left out because she's trying to kind of overcompensate for her little size. So yeah, they're trying to get these potions ready to kind of make her feel buff. It's kind of basic. It's funny, it's comical, it's chill, but it didn't really give me anything other than that. It was just alright, you know. And then I read Moonbath, Bathing Rituals and Recipes for Relaxation and Vitality by Dakota Hills. The release date for this one is the 15th of September 2020, and I gave this one a 2-star, unfortunately. It's literally like a little non-fiction book with bath rituals. Again, the title for this is very self-explanatory. It is like it's broken into like seasons and new moons and stuff, and what kind of baths you should do to give certain intentions and that sort of stuff, which usually I really enjoy. It did give me exactly what it said on the tin, so I guess that's a good thing, but it just was very repetitive. A lot of the times, a lot of the ingredients and what they said they were used for no matter what the season was, no matter what the intention was, it was very samey, and it was very dull to look at as well. I feel like they could have utilised relevant illustrations alongside the photography that was in there. It just was very plain, but if you like kind of minimalistic design structure to pages, then cool. But for me, it was just like, it felt like a chore to get through. Then I finished Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams, which released on the 11th of April last year. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I think a lot of people know what Queenie is about, and it's basically about a woman who, she's kind of having a little bit of a midlife crisis. She's just gone on a break with her boyfriend, and she's kind of struggling internally and externally to hold on to her relationships with her friends, with work. She's working at like a newspaper place, office, and she's just not balancing life very well. She also has Jamaican heritage, which is really fun because I loved that representation, because I just felt so connected to the story even more, because I was like, I felt represented. Again, Queenie and some of the family members felt so relatable to me. Like, I absolutely loved it. For example, there was a scene where she was at church with her little cousin and they were just texting basically taking the mick out of like their grandparents and stuff in church. And me and my little cousins, when we used to go to church with my nan, we'd sounds so bad, we used to use Picto Chat on the DS and like message each other. Like when Nan was belting out those words, she would, just like the Nan in this book, she would be singing so loudly but singing the complete wrong words, or like behind, like delayed, and me and my cousins would just look at each other. Or there'd be like this old woman singing very like operatic in the church when no one was giving it that sort of level, and we just look at each other and be like Picto chatting. So funny. And then story of her and Tom's relationship, because you had these awesome like flashbacks, and it was kind of like the blossoming of the relationship, and seeing those scenes and knowing ultimately that that relationship was falling apart, it just really got me deep in my feelings. And I was like, damn, like choking up whilst I was reading it during my lunch break. And yeah, I love how the ending was really realistic. It wasn't like that fairy tale happily ever after, the princess come and saved you. It was like she needed to save herself, and you know, kind of, it wasn't just an instant fix, it was a work in progress, but we were getting there, you know. So I really loved that. Unfortunately, I did struggle with the pacing and how much time was passing. And in terms of formatting of the early edition that I received from on my Kindle, there were some weird displacements of text that I saw, but it wasn't too jarring. I'd eventually realise, oh wait, that's supposed to be here, and then I'd read it in the right order, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I think that was just like a formatting error. Last book that I managed to read for August was Bringing Back the Beaver by Derek Gow. The release date for this is the 30th of September 2020, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I believe it is basically like a non-fiction nature writing piece about bringing back the beaver and reintroducing it into the UK, Britain, our sort of land, and the sort of trials and tribulations of that, and the history of it, really. So yeah, I felt like it was a really beautifully written nature book. It was easy to understand the history of beavers, particularly in Scotland, and again the trials and tribulations of the reintroduction, what people were saying, farmers, politicians, all these sort of things. DEFRA, there was a lot on DEFRA, and it was quite a funny voice. Like, I would say the way the author writes it is quite comical, interjecting into it, but it's a very serious piece of text, obviously, but it wasn't without humour, and because of that I felt like it'd be very good for the sort of general consumer. At times I would say it was just a little bit kind of pretentious, but other than that I did really enjoy it. It was just literally a layout of the history, what they wanted to do, how they came to do it, backs and forths of like debating arguments for and against, that sort of stuff, all the sort of things that I enjoyed when I was at uni and learning about like conservation and things like that. So yeah, Hello, so this is Future Gen, also still the past. Seeing as it's still the 31st as I'm filming this, I have literally just finished reading Hurricane Season by Nicole Melby, and it was released on the 7th of May 2019, but for some reason it only just popped up recently on NetGalley. And yeah, I love this one. I think I'm going to give it like a 4 stars, so I'll just read the synopsis of it for you. Fig, a 6th grader, wants more than anything to see the world the way her bipolar father does. A once renowned pianist, he hasn't composed a song in years and has unpredictable good and bad days. Fig even takes an art class, diving into a project about Van Gogh to better understand the minds of artists, including hopefully her father. But then Fig's dad shows up at school disorientated and desperately searching for her. Not only has the class not brought Fig closer to understanding him, it has brought social services to their door. Hurricane Season is an unforgettable story about the healing power of love and the limits of that power. I really enjoyed this. This was such a good book. So it's like, I guess, counts as children / middle grade on my little statistics thing, and it bumps it up to 9 books that I read in August, which is awesome. So yeah, I just found that it was beautiful. Like the conversations on mental health and sexuality as well were talked about almost raw and real, but not in a way that would scare a young audience. It felt soft and gentle and, yeah, hard and traumatic for a child to be seeing all that, but also like it's okay, you know, like you're not alone. And I just really, sorry, I haven't even written my review out properly yet, but I just really enjoyed the approach that we had to this story. And yeah, it was really great. If I as usual, my Goodreads reviews are always linked down in the description. I don't know if I'll talk about this quickly at the beginning of next month's wrap up, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was such a great book. Would totally recommend. Hurricane Season ties in quite well when you kind of learn more about Fig and her dad. So yeah, definitely check this one out. Back to the outro. That is it for my August wrap up. I really had an enjoyable reading month. I'm glad I read what I did, and I'm glad that I've managed to actually finish that 20 NetGalley reads goal. Of course, I've been requesting more, so I don't know if that's ever going to go down, but I will probably be continuing reading more, obviously. And yeah, I will speak to you in the next video soon. I think I'm going to be doing a autumn TBR soon, so look forward to some of those books that are still on my TBR from the summer and the spring and the winter. But yeah, I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye. Don't forget to let me know what you've been reading. Okay, bye for reals.